We are in a culture that pushes urgency bias. Your phone is pushing urgency bias. Every ding on your phone, every notification, all of that is designed to push you in a state of reacting and reacting and reacting and reacting. Hello and welcome to Divergent Paths. I'm your host, Dr. Regina McMenomy. I am a doctor, but not that kind of doctor, and this is a podcast, not medical advice. Urgency bias is the tendency to focus on whatever feels most urgent in the moment, even if it isn't the most important thing in the long run. If you've ever waited until the very last second to start something, and then pulled it off in a burst of hyperfocus, you've felt urgency bias at work. It can look like procrastination, but underneath, it's really about how our brains and our nervous systems are wired to respond to immediate pressure. My intrepid co-host, Russ Catanach, and I dig into why urgency bias shows up, when it helps us, when it hurts us, and what we can do to work with it instead of against it.
Hey, Regina, I manage projects, right? I do that on a daily basis. Marketing guy, but I also manage projects,
Sure.
Make stuff happen.
Yes.
Isn't urgency bias a good thing? Like a bias towards getting something done? Or am I completely wrong on this?
You're kind of wrong on this.
Okay. At least I'm only kind of wrong.
You're mostly wrong.
Okay. Well, what are you going to do? Tell me then, what is this?
Urgency bias isn't just about getting things that are urgent done. It's a tendency to prioritize what feels urgent right now versus what is actually urgent.
So something that might be urgent on Monday. Oh my God, we got to get this. This is a fire. We got to get this done. And then Tuesday, Right. It's like, well, we got this other fire. Or, well, that wasn't that important. Is that what we're talking about?
Or let's make it less a project thing and say you have a bill that is due by 5 p.m. tonight.
Okay.
And instead of it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and instead of paying it at 8 o'clock in the morning, you wait until 4:45 and the panic sets in and you get the bill paid.
I see. So this is a bit of procrastination as well. This is you're procrastinating so that you get to the fire and then you're like, oh my God, I got to do this now. And it has to be done.
It's a ranking problem. You don't always, you can't, it's not even procrastination really. You can't always get things done until it feels urgent enough that it has to be done. So do you have any friends who only deal with their taxes on April 15th?
I just had somebody say the other day to me that not only April 15th of this year, but they're like 3 years behind on their taxes. I'm like, okay, this is not good.
Right.
But then they went on to describe something else that they needed to do, and it needed to be done 3 months ago. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm seeing a trend here. So now I guess I know what I'm seeing.
So now you know what urgency bias is, because because ADHD brains and neurodivergent brains seek novelty and immediate reward, and urgency creates dopamine, right? Which neurodivergent brains don't uptake well enough, right? So the dopamine gets lost, the receptors don't pick it up. So you need often to create more dopamine in order to get any into your receptors. So the urgency of leaving your taxes until April 15th, of waiting to submit the bill until 15 minutes before it's due, all of that is providing you with dopamine. And that's the problem with urgency bias with neurodivergent brains in particular. There is a dual process of not being able to understand what needs to be prioritized when. and the fact that your brain rewards you with the dopamine you're seeking when you do things at the last minute. So those two things combined means it takes a lot of effort to shape it and to shape your life in a way that, you're not constantly in this kind of like push and pull.
So when you say ranking problem, are we misranking the importance, urgency, or the reward, or all three?
Well, I mean, rewards are a different thing. Like, that's a different thing. But it's really an inability to look at a list, or it's not even to look at the list and prioritize what is urgent for what reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we've talked previously about interest-based nervous systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes you have to follow the brain piece where it's coming,
Right.
right? Where you can get it from. Your nervous system has to be engaged in it to get it done. Like I needed to send an email, or actually I needed to make a phone call. Now, I've talked before, phone calls are kind of funky for me. It's hard sometimes, especially if I'm calling somebody I don't know, or I'm calling about doctor's appointments. Phone calls are hard for me to make a lot of the time. So I needed to make a phone call in order to get started on some paperwork for my daughter. And I had to be in the right state of mind. And yesterday it finally hit. I finally got you can pick up the phone and make this call. And so I picked up the phone and I made the call, like, because I was just like, do it right now, do it. And I did it. And then, laughingly about this, because that person who picked up on the phone is like, oh yeah, you need to send that person an email. And I'm like,
Oh.
you're telling me
Mm-hmm.
that I have been waiting for the juice to make the phone call. And now I need to send an email. And I am not very happy about this. So I actually emailed her school and told the head of her school, I'm like, in your instructions, maybe you
Maybe.
put the
Yes.
option that you don't actually need to make the phone call. You just need to email this person, because this is the person you need to talk to about this, because this person does all of these things. This is the person you need to talk to. So I'm like, maybe you want to update your instructions.
It's so funny that you bring this story up, because just today at work, I was like, somebody said that, we have this little icon of a telephone next to our contact button. And they said that might stress people out. Like they got to make a phone call. And many people don't want to do that. So it's funny that you bring this up. Now I
Right.
understand. I understand why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is, and that would be like, a different icon. You could put like something that looks like a business card or something like that. If it's just their contact information, we have this bias toward, telephones or phone conversations or whatnot, because
Mm-hmm.
it has been prioritized for a long time as like the gold standard of communication. But we live in a time where that isn't necessarily, the case, or doesn't have to be the case.
So, okay, can this be useful though? I mean, for me, I feel like I do this a little bit,
Uh-huh.
right? Like,
Yeah,
and
I would say you do. There was
and
some recognition in there when I was like,
but like getting ready for, like, I'm doing a stand-up comedy class, right? And I had to
Mhm.
write comedy. I didn't have time. So while we were at the Comic-Con,
Right.
I was like, okay, well, this is due Monday. It's Saturday. I'm going to write this
Mhm.
routine and just make it happen. But like, I feel like, and the reason why I ask if this can be, helpful, is because I feel like it does kind of put me in this zone of, okay, I need to get this done. I need to get this done. I have a deadline. And granted, I didn't wait until, the class starts at 7. So I didn't start writing it at 6:30, but I at least had a couple of days there, but
Yeah.
it, it sort of like powers me through it a little bit more. Do
Mhm.
you find that as well?
Yeah, I'm definitely pressure prompted about certain things, like, imposed deadlines that somebody else imposes. I have a really hard time self-imposing deadlines. Um, and that's a little bit a little bit trickier for me. I am getting a little better about it. But yeah, imposed deadlines, being pressure prompted, feeling like I need that push sometimes is definitely a thing that can work. There are pitfalls with it, especially if you perhaps rely on that too much.
What about well, actually, first let's talk a little about those pitfalls,
Well, I
because
mean,
that sounds fun.
we're not talking about the game from your youth.
Oh, I do love that game.
So do I. The pitfalls are that having to be under that kind of pressure in order to get things done means you're having a high stress rate. It means you are likely flooding your system with cortisol, and you are, kind of going through a stress situation where you don't necessarily have to be in a stress situation. And there's also the problem where you're constantly reacting rather than being proactive and planning. And because you do manage projects, you know that in a project, especially in a long-term project, you need to have a balance of that. You need to have a balance of when you are working on the short-term goals that need to be done immediately, but you also need to be working on those far-out goals. And if you are always in a state of reactivity, where your urgency bias is the only thing that drives you to get things done, you can't work in that far out place in your project. You only work in the immediacy of every day and every moment, and what is next. And for me, in addition, a pitfall of that is my working memory isn't great, so I don't always hold on to things. And when I am in that state for too long of working in a needing to get things done because there's pressure prompting me to do it, I will forget things and I will start freaking out, and sometimes I haven't actually forgotten things, but I'll just think that I have because I'm in this like, oh my God, what's next? Oh my God, what's next? Oh my God, what's next?
Mm-hmm. I feel like that yeah, I felt that. We'll just say that. Let's though.
You can tell a story.
Well, I'm just thinking, like that's so like my radio days, like working in
Yes.
radio, and there's just so
Radio
many
is
things to
very
think
pressure
about.
prompted.
There's always, a deadline. Literally every day there is a new deadline of that day,
Mm-hmm.
So you sort of like walk away from it and you're like, did I do everything? Do I need to go check stuff again?
Right.
Like, do I? And even if you're not freaked out about something,
Yeah.
or you don't even know what it is exactly, you're like, okay, there's something.
Right.
Usually it was nothing. So I don't know where that came from, but
Yeah.
I guess it was a little bit, specifically in radio, I, because back then when people listened and understood what radio was, we'll put a link to Wikipedia so that, for those of you that don't know what it is, you can look it up. It's in the history books, but there were always people like literally lining up each week to take your job,
Right.
like there was a lot of hiring, firing. So
Yeah.
I did feel like there was a need to be perfect in what I
Yeah.
did, right? This need
Mm-hmm.
for perfectionism. How
Yeah.
does this tie in with perfectionism?
Well, I mean, it's a nice way to kind of avoid it. Because if you're, if the deadline is looming, you have to throw perfectionism out the window, right? Like you just have to get it done.
Right.
Right. And unfortunately, what comes with that, another pitfall, is you make stupid mistakes or you make unnecessary mistakes because you are in this pressure prompted space. And, so that ends up being another pitfall. But yeah.
When has it really worked well for you though?
When has it really worked well for me? I had a project that I was the lead on several years ago, and having the deadline, I had a lot of work that needed to be done in a very short period of time, and having that, knowing I needed to not disappoint some of the people I was working with on the project made me absolutely perfect my technological approach to what I was doing. So I had absolutely streamlined it. I was migrating classes from one learning service to another, learning management service, LMS, to another. I was an administrator, I was an instructional designer, and I was handling this. And the person whose classes I was working with was one of my favorite coworkers, and she was great, and I love her. And I wanted to make sure I did a really good job because these were her classes. And so I really honed in on how I could do it fast, how I could do it well, and how I could put those two things together so I could get through this large catalog of courses that I needed to migrate for her. And that was one example of being able to take that urgency and make it really work quickly, so that I could work quickly through like this large catalog of classes that needed to be moved.
So what you're saying is every time this has happened to you, where you've had some sort of urgency bias, it's worked out amazing and there's never been a problem.
I'm not saying that at all.
I know, but let's get to the problems now. This is the more fun stories. Like when it works out well, it's a good story. But when it doesn't work out well, it's a great story.
Right.
For the podcast.
Right. So later after that process, after we went through that migration, we ended up going through another one, which was, dumb, but we were going through another one. And I had been promoted in that time. So I had gone from instructional designer to the director of the program. And as director of the program, I had a lot more frying pans in the fire, right? I did not have one program to manage. I was managing expectations for all of the academic directors, all of them, right? And so then that took and like ramped it all up. And I couldn't work like that and I had to drop the perfectionism at that point. Like I had to drop the expectation that I could do. I did a lot of work. Like I plowed through the classes that I migrated. And I mean, just slammed through them because I had set up this system that was, so perfected that I didn't have the time for that this time. Not only because I didn't have as much time to plan the project, but also because I had just had so much more work to do and so many more people to manage in the process to make it work. So that didn't work as well. And I was constantly I feel like I'm working, 8 hours a day and still not able to catch up and to do well because I'm constantly feeling like I'm behind.
Right. How aligned is this with burnout?
Oh, definitely. Like this is like the fast track to burnout.
Right. Well, I mean,
can you imagine?
That's what happened
like
with radio. That's what happened in your job.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is exactly. Yeah. Like that's what I burnt out teaching. I burnt out in higher ed. Like I burnt out in the director job. That was crash and burn, and that is definitely so. It definitely leads to burnout when you're so driven by urgency bias, and you don't have that like long view, and you're not looking at the big goals in the project, and you're not looking at the the landscape. You're not zoomed back to be able to see the big picture. You lose like the hope and the reason why you're doing things, right? You lose that like motivation, and you lose that sense of like community because you are in such a reactive space.
If you're always sort of creating this urgency for you that doesn't need to exist, how do you tell the difference? How do you do it? Like, how do you tell the difference between like real, like, okay, this is actually a healthy urgency, like a motivator, versus like this destructive urgency and stress cycle?
That is an excellent question. And the first thing I want to say is just funny. Like, is anything actually on fire?
That is a great answer to this question. Actually, just
because
that.
because
Right.
that is like we have and like we are in a culture that that pushes urgency bias. Your phone is pushing urgency
Yeah.
bias. Every ding on your phone, every notification, all of that is designed to push you in a state of reacting and reacting and reacting and
Totally.
reacting. We
Yep.
live in a news cycle that is reactive. We live in a news cycle that has been generated, for clickbait, that is generated to get attention, to, splash and, you know, fade out. Like it's, how many news stories do you just hear about like all one day and it's gone the next day, and all it's
Totally.
something new
Yeah.
and it's
Uh-huh.
something new and it's something new, and all of that is urgency culture. And so when you have a brain that is struggling with dopamine regulation, and you have a brain that wants that, it's particularly difficult to look at the world and look at your life and look at the choices you're making and say, no, nobody's bleeding and nothing is on fire. And you need to teach your nervous system that, right? Because that's part of it, right? Like when we talk about rejection sensitivity and demand avoidance, we're talking about fear-based reactions, right? Some of urgency bias is also fear-based, and it's partially learned when you are neurodivergent, if you're late diagnosed and you don't know it for your whole life, and you don't know how to come to, oh, this is important and this isn't, then everything seems like it's on fire
Right.
and everything
Totally.
feels like it's bleeding
Yep.
and nothing
Totally.
is. So,
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there were a few points back in like towards my later radio days. I was just like, nobody's gonna die today.
right.
Like if this
Mhm.
commercial doesn't make it to the studio by
Right.
4:30, people will live. You know,
Yes.
and it is like putting stuff into perspective like that. Now
Yeah.
you talked about tools, right? Like, and I know, like,
Mhm.
Slack messages, news messages, the iPhone constant alerts, email messages, whatever that Signal app that you made me download, all these different apps that are just pushing in more and more alerts to
Right.
you, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm kind of a tech friendly guy though. So I would think, do you know of any apps out there or tools that make it like that help on this, or things that you've done maybe like, for instance, like I'm pretty good now about changing on my phone the uh what's that called, the mode that you're in. So it's
Yes.
like, I have work mode, I have personal mode, I have sleep mode, I
Yes.
have, all these different modes. And sometimes, like for instance, when I'm going to go do improv, it just automatically comes on without me having to make the change, right? So are
Right.
there other like technologies or little shortcuts like that that you would recommend for people
Well,
that experiencing this?
the first one I would suggest would be to use what's native to your phone. So, like, we're both iPhone users, and to use, um, I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I know, right? The mode change, right? This is what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Like, I'm trying to remember what it's called. Like,
Apple, if you're listening,
focus.
you need to
Your
you need to
focus.
change the name of this so we can remember.
It's
Focus.
focus,
Okay.
right? To create a focus for work, a focus for, sleeping, a focus for, there's do not disturb is kind of, there's standard settings of ones that like your phone comes with, but you can set them to trigger at times of day. You can set them to trigger in the, like this one for the car. So like if you're in the car, it will turn your texting off so you're safe when you're driving. And there's other things that are kind of like built in, but going in and learning your phone settings for like setting a focus. I don't know what it's called in Android. Sorry for any Android listeners, but I'm sure that there are similar things that you can do. I work to reduce the number of notifications that come from any one app. And I try really hard to make sure that the notifications that are especially ringing through to my watch are just priority notifications, right? Because I don't want it vibrating my wrist and like literally physically asking me for my attention unless it's something I actually have to like pay attention to, like for real.
Mm-hmm.
So like things like that, recognize that all of the apps want you to get notifications because all apps are driven to keep you engaging in them, right? And your phone is made for you to continue to engage with it. So be mindful of like, don't have notifications from maybe some of your shopping apps, or like I turned social media notifications off years ago, like years and years ago. And I have never turned them back on. I do not get notifications for Instagram. I do not get notifications for Facebook. I don't have Facebook on my phone anymore, but like
And
I turned all of those off.
you know what's kind of nice too is you could do these summaries, right? So
Yes.
you can add them all
That was
into
gonna be my
summaries.
next
This,
one.
again, iPhone, but
Yeah.
you
I was
do
going to
the
do, I was going to
summaries.
say the same thing, like your daily
And you can totally
summary.
do that. Yeah, you can do that
Mhm.
with social media if you want to. But what you're going to
Exactly.
find eventually is you don't even check the summary.
Right.
That's how
That's
unimportant it
exactly what
all
happened.
is.
Exactly.
You
You
know?
just realize like, oh, well, there's just garbage in here. I don't need to pay
Oh,
attention to any of
Regina
this,
ate
right?
another taco. Like, I don't care to see the photo.
Right.
You know? Like, yeah.
You say that, but then I know you look at all my photos, so.
I especially if it's a taco or beer or
Right.
barbecue, like that's half my feed.
Right. Priorities.
Okay, so what are some other things we can do, like maybe non-technical things that we can do to work with this instead of against?
Right. So one of the things I would suggest is starting to recognize building your day as much as you can around things that are short-term, in demand, things that are on a timeline, and working so your day has long-term goals in it as well, so you're not always in a short-term cycle. One of the things that I'm starting to work on, like we talk about time blocking, like you said, a specific amount of time aside for a single activity, right, during the day, if you can think about it, like how you can shape your day. Also have been playing around with setting certain days aside for certain activities. Like if I know that writing is going to come easiest to me when I have physically moved my body. So when I have exercised, it's easier for me to write afterward. So I know that the days that I want to work on my newsletter, or I want to work on content for the website, or content for other things that I'm working on, I am shaping my days and my time blocks to work on things so that those times that I'm working on that type of content are after I've exercised. Because I know that I will be able to have the kind of focus that my nervous system will be regulated in a way that is calm and centered so that I can, produce.
When you can start to recognize that too, you can get so much more done in those times because you're not, it's like video editing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I like to do video editing or audio editing like after like 9 p.m.
Right.
It
Thank
just
God,
works better
because
for me.
I need to record things late usually.
Exactly.
Last week I was like done 15 minutes before he edited.
And I also like to, like I'll do like editing and stuff like on an early Saturday morning or something, right? So it's funny how like during the week I've got my set of like, oh, I got to do this at this time, versus the weekend it's completely different. I mean, I went from AM to PM there, with just because it just works.
It can work that way, right? It can work that way. Yeah. And so recognizing how you can set yourself up to start recognizing too that you are in, urgency bias, that you're sort of gripped by it, and start to recognize it. And I say this a lot, but like we're trying to break a lot of habits. Like if you are someone who has been driven by urgency bias, getting out of it is going to take some time. And again, don't beat yourself up if you fall back, but also recognize that like pausing and asking like, okay, is this urgent? Why do I feel this is urgent? Is there a person? Is there a financial risk? Is there a cost to this? Is there an emotional cost to this? Like, what are some of the things that could be negatively impacted by this?
Mm-hmm. I I'm sort of wondering, and I know, so as we all know, Regina gives me some questions. I think I've asked like three of them, but I keep coming up with my own because I'm interested in the topic. So,
Yes,
what are you going to do? You're
that's
interesting, Regina.
thank you.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry about that.
But what I'm thinking is like, I mean, okay, you were late diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, let's look at over time here. How has your view of urgency bias changed?
It's changed a lot. And part of that is knowing, because I used to run my whole life on urgency bias. And one of the things I will joke with another with a I have joked about this with a couple of clients as well, but I do joke about this with one of my closest friends often. Before we were diagnosed and before we got medicated, we mistook our anxiety and our urgency bias as executive functioning, because that was the only way sometimes to actually get things done,
Mm,
was to have enough anxiety about needing to get something done that I could push myself into it. So I lived in this space for a really, really long time, as like this was the only way I could get things done, because it was the only
right.
way I could shortcut my brain to get it to do well, not I wasn't shortcutting my brain, I was shortcutting my nervous system to get it interested into
Yeah.
doing things,
Yeah.
right?
Tricking yourself.
I was tricking myself. I didn't realize it. It was just how I had like
Yeah.
lived my life. But, yeah,
Yeah. I would think also that somebody could look at this as failure, right?
sure. I mean, if somebody
What?
wanted to frame it that way, they certainly could.
Yeah. I mean, it feels
As
like
a
this is like
shortcoming.
the question, almost in every topic that we cover. It's like all of these things could be like somebody could frame it in their own
Yeah,
mind as a failure, right? Like I
absolutely.
think I did that a little bit in the radio days,
Yeah.
and that's I guess sort of where the question's coming from. But
Hmm.
if let's say somebody's listening or asking you a question right now, and wanted to reframe urgency bias so that it doesn't feel like failure, how do they do so?
I mean, I'm going to always go back to this. This is, probably if we were going to pick a single theme for the show, it's don't feel shame about this. Like it's okay that you have shortcut your brain like this, and that you've shortcut your nervous system to trick it into doing what you needed it to do. You know, that would be my big reframe. If you end up having to do this to be successful and to survive, that is what it is. I
Yeah.
mean, why, like the cliche is like know better, do better, right? Like know better, do better. Like you'll learn and you'll learn. And as you make those moments and you start to take a beat and to take a moment before you react, which again is easier to do if you have a regulated nervous system. If you can take that moment before you react to something and think about it and think about how it's impacting, how it might impact you, how it might impact your family, how it might impact your relationships, how it might impact work, like stop and think, okay, am I reacting out of like this need to just control and do everything just to get it done? Like what is the motivation? Where is it coming from? And reframe it as, okay, I can use this. Like sometimes I do have to have the bill needs to be paid at 5 o'clock and I pay it at 4:45. And I don't know, this is kind of an aside story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. I started a couple of years ago doing these writing competitions for microfiction. And it has been really fun. Microfiction is fun just in general. So these are like stories that need to be like 100 words and 250 words. And the 100 words is my favorite. I like the 250 and there's a 500 as well. And I think they have a longer one as well. Anyway, the website is NYC Midnight is this. So you get your prompt at midnight. For the 100 words, it's due 24 hours later. So you have 24 hours to get your story written and submitted. You're given random prompts and you don't know any of what you're going to be writing about before you get your prompt. And it's usually you get a genre, and depending on which one it is, you get an object and a word, or an action and a word that need to be included in the story. And it is really interesting to do because it is urgent by nature. You have a limited window, right? You have a limited window,
Right.
and you're given prompts that are out of your control. And it has really taught me how to recognize something that is actually urgent, because like it has to be submitted by this time. Like it has to be submitted. I'm on the West Coast. NYC Midnight is midnight in New York City. So like I submit mine. I get my prompts at 9 o'clock on a Friday night. Saturday night at 9 o'clock, it's due, right? And, you know, it is urgent, and it is actually urgent. And so I have been able to kind of train myself to understand what real urgency feels like in my nervous system because of this like fun thing I'm doing. And it fills me up. Like I get excited. I love doing them. It's like really fun to share and, you know, that. So it's a nice, fun way to train myself to understand real urgency versus me trying to sort of maybe build urgency so that I can get something done.
Right. You know, I learned something from every episode. This one, I learned that urgency bias is running this show more than I realized, because this, you revealed in the actual show here that you do the audio 15 minutes before I need to edit. So it turns out that urgency bias is more of an overarching theme to this show than you realized.
Quite possibly. Not always, but there is sometimes. Like sometimes I'm way ahead. Like sometimes I'm very ahead. Sometimes I'm very ahead, and sometimes I am not. So
not so much. Not so much.
Yeah.
Like whenever you're listening to this, I just finished editing it about 15 minutes before.
It's not that close, but our last episode that went up, the last long episode, you finished that like at midnight when it needed to go out at 9 o'clock the next morning, and I got up to like make sure it was like
that was
a little tight.
So if somebody wants to reach out to you, Regina, or sign up for your newsletter, how do they do so?
Make sure to check out my website, divergentpathsconsulting.com, and you can sign up for the newsletter. It's called Nerd Notes, and it comes out on Monday mornings. So, because like nerdy notes are a great way to start your week off, right?
Totally.
So here's the big takeaway. Urgency bias isn't laziness or a character flaw. For ADHD brains, it's a nervous system strategy, a way of generating enough energy to take action. Sometimes that looks like brilliance under pressure, and sometimes it leads us straight to burnout. The key is learning when urgency serves you and when it is costing you, and finding ways to create gentler systems of accountability so you don't have to live in crisis mode. Thanks for listening to Divergent Paths. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend who might recognize their own urgency bias at play, and sign up for Nerd Notes. Link is in the show notes. Until next time, keep building a life that works with your brain, not against it.